Welcome to Integrated. This is the podcast where we seek to bridge the gap between the intellect and the will so that we can grow as disciples of Christ, surrendering all that we are and all that we have to the truth.
Hey guys, welcome back to Integrated. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm still getting used to some new things with the setup, and so I'm not really sure if it's working right. So if you could tell me, I would really appreciate that. And yeah, so thanks for joining me. I figured it was about time I finally gave an update. It's kind of been a weird, just like a weird year in general. I finally was able to start like getting more content put out. I sort of decided we actually at the beginning of the year in like February had enrolled one of our kids in a private school because the homeschooling thing was just like not working at that time, and sort of realized like, well, if that's something we're able to put money towards, then like maybe we could actually fit in some money set aside to like help with getting mothers helpers in the house, that kind of a thing. And so for like 5 hours a week, I have help, which isn't a lot, but it honestly has made just the world of a difference. And now my daughter is homeschooling again, and it's actually working out really great this year. And I'd be happy to talk about that some more too, just that homeschooling journey, so to speak. But with that being said, um, there's just been a lot of things moving, I guess you could say, in our life this year. And when June came around, I was just feeling like super convicted that I couldn't continue to, in good conscience, have my Patreon open because at the time I wasn't really putting out hardly any content at all. And I felt very guilty about that. And so even though nobody ever complained, it's not like I had just like hundreds of people supporting my work. It was maybe less than a dozen people, but I still just felt like I can't, even the $5 a month, I just felt guilty about. And around the time that I shut down my Patreon, a couple weeks later, all of a sudden somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, we are starting a new platform. We would really like to talk about the possibility of you joining us in the future when we get this thing started." And I was like, well, this sounds like an interesting idea. And that's kind of how this process of ending up being on Pelican Plus happened. So Integrated is obviously my podcast. I've had this thing for years now. It's my baby, and it will continue. I've definitely been asked, like, are you going to continue doing podcasts on your channel? Yes, I am. So for those of you who are worried about that, please don't worry about it. But there are going to be some changes. Like, I'm just sort of diving right into it tonight, you guys. Sorry. But I want to get it all in before Nancy comes on because I'm having Nancy on tonight. But anyway, so yeah, the podcast will remain. I'm not sure of the exact frequency. I feel like I kind of have to find this new homeostasis now that I will be contributing to Pelican Plus, and I'll talk a little bit more about my show. But for my own podcast, what I've also been feeling torn about other things regarding my podcast. It wasn't just the money stuff, but I just felt like things maybe weren't quite as dialed in as I had wanted them to be. I feel like I got really comfortable. Pretty early on, I connected with a lot of different publishers, and they would pitch me like books that were being published. They'd pitch me interviews, and I said no to a lot of interviews, but I was starting to like, yeah, I'll interview this person about this book because I love reading. I mean, I really do. I enjoy reading, and so it's like, sweet, send me the book. I will read it, and we will talk about it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, but that's not exactly why I started Integrated. And I sort of began to feel like, am I just like turning into a podcast where I'm just like pitching books? Like that's not what I want to do with my podcast. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly selling people books and things like that. I wanted to be doing something a little bit different in scope. And so right now I'm in the process of more or less refining the things that I do want to cover, because the types of things I wanted to cover with this podcast had a lot to do with like, how do we how do we heal ourselves in a world like where all of us are really broken, different, we have different wounds, we have all these different things going on. We're struggling with living in a culture that is very degrading and disconnected. And so what I wanted to talk about in my podcast is like, how do we deal with these things? How do we heal? Uh how do we bring into alignment our spiritual lives and like our physical bodies? Because I think so much of the cultural discourse is really rooted in like this dualism, and we've divorced uh our nature and like on a spiritual level from our bodies, right? Like that's kind of embodied in a sense in the transgenderism movement. And so it was kind of that ethos that I wanted to address and really look at woundedness, and the way that God heals us in our bodies, in our minds, in our souls, like all of these things. So anyway, that's a broad way of discussing and relationally. Like I think the relationship component is really important and often very overlooked. So I want to like zero in on those things again. And so it's going to kind of take some time because I need to reframe how I go about seeking out interviews, or do I do a lot of interviews, or do I do more of just like more commentary of like, here's what here's what I'm studying right now and why this is interesting, or I don't know, like I'm still figuring that out, but I do want to dial that in, and I don't want to feel like I'm constantly pitching books to you guys. Even if, if there's a certain book that comes along that really fits that scope, then sure, that's one thing. But I just don't want it to feel like my whole podcast is like, yeah, pitching you books. So, um, with that being said, I will still be posting, not as frequently right now as I've been able to the last couple of months, but I also will be doing more live streams in the evenings, and that's one of the things that Nancy Charles will be coming on for. She's going to be a somewhat regular, whether it's like once a month or once every other month. We haven't dialed it in quite yet, but she's agreed to be a somewhat regular guest here because I think she just has so much to offer. And I think truthfully, in some ways, like I do want my podcast to be a place where people that have really valuable things to say, probably way more important than I have to say, that they have a place to do that. I know it's not like the biggest platform ever, but at least it's something. And so Nancy will be coming on. I think she just is a wonderful human being. She inspires me, and I think that's important to like lift up those voices that are truly inspiring, are um, doing real good and edifying the church right now. So um, that's integrated. That's where we're at right now. Now Pelican Plus, like what is that? I don't know how many of you have seen what's going on here. Probably because I'm thinking maybe a lot of you have. I mean, Dr. Kwasniewski is on there, and that was like right on the heels of him going on to Matt Fradd's podcast to talk about the Latin Mass and the history of the Latin Mass and things like that. So, and that was that podcast is incredible. I'm like halfway through it, and it's just so good. So if you haven't watched that interview yet, definitely go do it. But Dr. K is on Pelican Plus. He's a big one. And then people like Tim Flanders from Meaning of Catholic. Many of you guys know Nicholas Cavazos, who's a friend of mine and has been on the channel frequently. Kennedy Hall. And please, a side note, if you haven't heard, I feel like most of you guys probably have, but if you haven't, please pray for Kennedy and his family. They just lost their son. Was it yesterday or the day before? His wife had a scheduled C-section for their son, Gabriel Augustine, who was diagnosed in utero um, with like a condition that was not compatible with life, so to speak. Nancy is on. Nancy, she's gonna get her camera and stuff figured out. I'll get her off the stage until she gets that figured out. But anyway, so pray for Kennedy. But yeah, they're all on there, and I think some people are like, ugh, another Catholic podcast or another Catholic platform. It's like, yeah, I kind of get it. But the goal of Pelican Plus really is to do something that is more in line with really trying to get people down a pipeline of like into traditionalism, getting them interested in like the broader scope of our history as a church and tradition, things like that. And some people are probably wondering how I ended up on there because I even reached out to somebody else. I won't say who he is, but I love him. He's like such a good guy, and I was kind of trying to recruit him onto Pelican Plus, and he's like, I don't know, like it's like I don't know if I'm trad enough to be on it, and I think that's hilarious because I'm not like a I don't know. I'm more moderate, I guess. Like I love the traditional Latin mass. I love the traditions of the church. I think all of those things are really awesome and good. And I kind of have joked in the past that like if we did like a reverse Traditionis Custodes, I would probably be okay with that. Um, like that wouldn't bother me. But I'm not as like I am not driving 2 hours every weekend to go to the Latin mass kind of a person. Um, and so the reason I'm on there though is kind of for that reason. Like the people who started Pelican Plus, the founding collaborators, they weren't looking exclusively for people that look exactly like them. Um, it's really trying to be a bridge to get people looking at traditionalism and learning more about it, like inspiring that way. The way that Dr. K did such a good job uh, on his podcast with Matt Frad. So that's how I ended up on Pelican Plus. I'm doing a pro-life show. It's if you haven't seen like the trailer and whatnot, I won't bore you with all of the details, but I'm really excited about it because it really has helped me get kind of back into my roots, so to speak, of how I got involved in any public speaking to begin with. And just my deep passions. Like I think integrated in a way is an outgrowth of that because it has to do with just the dignity of the human person and what we were made for. And so talking about those life issues that are so integral to how we interact with the culture around us that is so anti-life on every single level. That's why I am doing a podcast for Pelican Plus. It's pro-life, it's life issues exclusive. So that's where it differs from my own podcast. And so they're completely different shows. So if you are interested, of course, like go check it out. Go check out the app. There's some content on there for free if you want. I think the subscriptions are honestly extremely reasonably priced. And you can get like an annual subscription, I think, for like I don't know if it's $49.99 a year or something of that nature. I mean, I would say very reasonable. And if you use the promo code LIFE, you get a discount and it lets them know that I sent you. But I would love to see you guys over there, especially I've heard from some of you like Supreme Crusader. He's always said he's loved my pro-life shows or when I've talked about life issues. And like more others of you out there have definitely said that too, because that is just a huge passion of mine. And I think that really comes out when I'm talking about those issues in particular. So that being said, I don't want to waste any more time. Nancy is ready. Her camera is working. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Hey, sorry. I was like, what is going on? My camera was like tripping out.
Is your mic connected to your computer or to StreamYard?
Oh, okay. Are you here? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it sounds like your computer
So
mic.
weird. Okay, give me 1 second. Oh, it's doing it on my shoot. Give me 1 second, Mike. Let's go.
So sorry. I also have one of my kids just ran into my studio. Elijah, go get a Band-Aid upstairs. Let Avery help you, please. That's not. He has like a paper cut. He's like, Mom, let's go. It's an emergency.
Is that better? That should be better.
That is a little bit better. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that should be the mic now.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me as always.
So, where do we even want to start this conversation? Nancy and I have been talking for 2 days.
I know
about that. We've spoken for hours about how we want to go about this particular show.
This is true.
What have you been? I noticed like you're not online as much these days. And I'm wondering, like, what are you doing now? Because there was a while there you were kind of doing, I don't know. I would say like it just sort of seemed like you were not on a podcast tour, but like you were bumping around from how you were pretty vocal online, like all
Doing
this
a lot
stuff.
more
And now
stuff.
every once in a while I will see you and then you're kind of gone for a while. So maybe you want to talk about that for a minute. I'm going to close my my office, or actually my husband's got it. Thanks, Lars. I love you.
Thanks, Lars.
Perfect. He got it. Now we won't hear piano in the background.
Yeah, so I was posting a lot more early on, you know, like, well, for starters, when I became Catholic, I didn't really anticipate, I know I've talked to you about this, like how many people would want to like interview and this and that. And that was like a whole new world for me to like be like constant. I was like, to figure out how to juggle all that was like, it was very stressful for me because I went from like not anybody that would ever be on a podcast or do an interview. I don't know. I'm a very private person. I'm also very as like social as I can be. I'm very much an introvert. So I being in like the public eye of any kind is very like was very stressful for me.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, I don't know. I was kind of and I still am in this kind of mode. It's not that I don't plan to like maybe do things in the future. I don't know. I kind of got to the point in my own personal Catholic walk where I just wanted to be alone with God. Like it was too noisy. Life got too crazy. And it was also, I was kind of like noticing a lot of like online stuff that didn't really like sit well with me. It was starting to like kind of jade me a little bit. And I thought this is a little too early in my Catholic walk to feel jaded. And I realized very quickly that the online Catholic space, in many ways, at least the stuff that I was tuned into, was not really reflective of what I was seeing in my real life at church. And I thought like, yeah, I realized that, you know, I was doom scrolling too much and just kind of involved in too many things that I just really wanted to disconnect. And so I did that.
How has that been for you? Like, what have you noticed? I feel like every once in a while, like I feel like Matt Fradd years ago, I used to listen to Matt like a lot back when Pints of the Aquinas actually was going through the Summa Theologiae. And so that was many, many years ago. But he talked about, was it him like doing a fast every year in like the late summer, early fall for like a whole month? He would fast from social media entirely, like any electronics, basically. And
I know Dave Rubin does that.
Or maybe it was Dave Rubin. I know he does too. But I thought Matt did too. Anyway, what have you noticed? Because I've also taken breaks from social media. So I'm wondering if we've seen the same things.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I was reading a lot of like different saints. And I started noticing in like a lot of the writings that I would read, just like the way that these saints were attempting to live, that and how they spoke about how it deepened their own spiritual life. And somebody who is like brand new to the church, I was very interested in this, and in a weird way, it was like I wanted to know what that was, and I still, you know, that's what I'm still wanting to know what that is. And so I thought I was really struggling initially with you know, because like it's one thing to like have a really crazy conversion story, and like I do. I mean, it's another thing to live the Catholic faith and to live it without all the extra noise, because it becomes almost impossible. Like I don't know, I just think there's so much, I've had a lot more peace, and I do, you know, it's not to say that I won't ever like, you know, go on a podcast or accept, you know, in fact, actually, I've been on several things recently. It's more like, I had to take a very like, you know, when you can get caught into like, oh, I got to post every day. People were telling me like, it was like, I was kind of getting like told and by certain people in the background, like to, you know, you got to post more regularly, stay relevant and stuff like that. And I honestly hated that. And I was like, I did not care about that. Like, that was like such a weird thing for me. I'm like, stay relevant. Like, what am I? Like, I just converted to Catholicism. Like, I'm not, you really, nobody really should be following me anyway. Like, other than my story. Like, what do I have to offer? I just have a story right now. I mean, I'm not trying to demean myself. I'm just saying that, like, there's certainly other Catholics that you should probably go like follow. Like, when you really think about it, like, I had just converted. Like, I had a story, but I haven't really had a chance to grow in that. And like, man, in the last 2 years, it just was 2 years. I've been confirmed 2 years on September 29th, this past year. And so, and even then, I'm still such a baby in this faith, but in that short period of time, actually, I mean, there's so much, that I've learned. And, I don't know. I think that the interior life, the quiet life I've had to really work on, like, building virtue, because, God helped me in a lot of ways. He helped me initially, there was a big healing factor to my conversion initially when when I met him at the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass and had my big conversion. But then, there's a lot that he also leaves unhealed, because that's the work, and so a lot of like what I've been going through lately is, it's just required a lot of like me and God time, if that makes sense. So, I was also from a very early on, I know I've talked to you about this. I've had a very healthy fear. I'm told it's very healthy, which is good. But I know I've talked to you on the back end, how it's like completely and totally sometimes gotten like,
debilitating,
very fearful. Yeah, it's because I, as somebody who's a new Catholic, I would get all these questions, that I, quite frankly, it's like I could answer from my perspective of somebody with like my lived experience in like the LGBT world and things like that. But, I'm not somebody who's studied the church for years. I'm not somebody who's studied the Bible for years. There's some questions that were just like, I was feeling like I didn't want to misrepresent the church. Like, I didn't want to, and, I still feel that way. So as I know, I went through like a series of like now I seek on most things that I post. Well, on a lot of things I post, I'll like share things, like with my priest and things like that, just to make sure, like, is this sound? Is this like, is there something I'm not sharing that's quite up to par, and I trust that they'll give me feedback if that's, needed, things like that. But I don't know. I think there's I have a really wonderful story. It's changed my life. And then I think it's okay to settle down into like, truly growing in the faith now. And God,
kind of
I've
your
always
hidden
been
years. Yeah.
Well, I've always also believed that God will like provide opportunities if that's what he's calling me to do. So that's why the algorithm doesn't matter to me, because, for instance, if I was giving the examples, is like I was posting I post very irregularly, but several times when because I'm a writer, I love writing. It's something I'm half decent at, and I really enjoy it. It's like one of the true
You're
like
an
loves of
incredible
my
writer.
heart.
I hope
Thank
that you
you.
write a book. I really do. We've talked about this.
Yeah, a lot of people keep mentioning it, so part of me feels like it'll eventually someday be in the works. But right now I feel like, I don't know, have you ever felt like you're growing so much, you're like, I'm not really in the place where like speaking is like speaking, sometimes you have those seasons where you're just like listening. You're like, speaking sounds dangerous in a weird way, like to my spiritual growth.
That's a really interesting thing. Can I pause on that? Because I feel
Yeah.
like there is kind of a season for everything, right? Like, we are liturgical, and it's not just that our calendar is liturgical or that our liturgy has a certain form, but like there are seasons in our lives too, or chapters or whatever. And I feel like if you're not attuned to that, you can really miss out on a lot of God's grace and what he is trying to show you. Because I've felt that way too. Like, I've had seasons where, for example, I've been completely offline, and there was growth that had to happen there, or like, and there are other things when you're like really wrestling with something, and I think it's when you're often at least for me anyway, it's like when you're wrestling with something and you're being stretched, because being stretched is like, I almost have no capacity for anything else because I'm spread so thin right now. And it's like, I'm being stretched beyond my means. This is something that is outside of the capacity that I thought that I had right now. And so like, I'm just going to sit with this because it's actually almost all that I can do. And then all of a sudden you realize like, oh yeah, now things are getting like, this is my new normal. And I've actually learned something about myself or God or both, you know, hopefully at least both, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting to hear you say that, because I've definitely experienced that.
I've also, cause like, I was noticing, like really early on, what is, I can't see it all the way. Oh, there.
Says, hey, Angela, Nancy, good to hear you, or good evening from the greatest state in the union. Lone
Oh,
Star,
there it is.
There's Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Good to see you, Nick.
I love that. Oh, there it is. I see it on my side now. I'm so blind. Oh my gosh. This is how like lame I am on podcasts. I'm like, how does this work? I want to move to like a flip phone. I despise my phone, and I'm not even saying that to like sound weird. I can't stand texting. You're so like illiterate.
You're not good at texting. No, for sure.
Yeah, you can affirm that. Yeah, okay, sorry. I know I'm not. Like, I'd rather you call me.
Yeah, I'm like, if I need to get a hold of you, I'm just gonna call you.
Yeah, that's just how it works with me. But anyway, yeah, you know, I was noticing too also that like early on, like when I was getting, especially around the Mar-a-Lago trip, when I was at Mar-a-Lago speaking. Oh man, I could sense early on that there would be a lot of like potential pitfalls in this trajectory. And I wasn't sure what those would be, but I mean, I've always had I don't know. I just one of my biggest, like I said, I've always shared with you on the back, and one of my biggest fears was being a stumbling block for people or making the church look bad. Based on my own unresolved sort of things that I'm slowly working through. And that was like, I was really scared of that. And I've talked to you about that on the back end for a long time. So like I would go to my priest and that's why like I would try to talk through things with my brother on the back end. One of my biggest fears would be that I would misrepresent the church, because I was realizing that I was getting jaded by seeing this in other online spaces. Like these people, sometimes I would watch people that I used to really, really enjoy in the beginning. And it's not that I don't enjoy them. I love all these people still. It's not like even one specific. It was just almost like towards the end of the Pope Francis era. It's so funny because everybody, I was too new to even get involved with all the like the politics of everything. You know what I mean? Like but you can't help but look away because it's very interesting and I want to learn, and you don't know what you should invest in learning and what you shouldn't. You sort of get pulled into things. Attention sort of gets grabbed, and you know, you want to learn. And it's not like anything that has been said is wrong or anything, but I was feeling a deep, like during the most, I would say, important time of my conversion where I was just a baby in it, I was feeling very weighed down by just issues that were just not, I felt like God was telling me, this isn't like something you need to worry about like right now. Like, put this away. Like, you just got here. You know, like you need to learn to pray. You need to learn to get quiet. You need to learn like the basics. And not only that, but it's funny because since I've actually started to really develop my prayer life, I go to daily mass now, which was a big change for me. My priest was telling me forever, like I'd go to confession and he'd be like, you should go to daily mass. And I was like, yeah, I'm just not that disciplined.
That sounds
and
nice. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I wanted to be, but I wasn't always somebody who had the discipline to do that. I mean, and now all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm like waking up every day and going to mass every day. And that's huge. And then I do my holy hour right after mass. So now I'm like, I only say that to say this, is that the more I've learned to get quiet with God, the more it's funny. Cause now when I watch things like that are happening in the church, it honestly, it just doesn't bother me. I even watched like when the thing about the St. Peter's Basilica and all the LGBT people, so many people flooded my inbox. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I'm like, what do I think about this? I think that God wins. And I think that he told us this would happen. And I don't think you should feel disturbed by it.
Well,
That's what I
I'm
think.
always like, when the context is like, Israel is always unfaithful in the Old Testament. I mean, it's like it's a story as old as time, literally.
Yeah.
That the people who are, I mean, Adam and Eve, they were in full communion with God, and they
Oh
still
yeah.
rejected him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there was no intimacy closer than that. They knew him,
Yeah.
and they still were like, yeah, we're gonna do what we want. Like,
Well, and it's not to say that like things shouldn't bother people.
right?
There is like
Yes,
a righteous. Here's the funny thing. Actually,
righteous
I heard
anger for
something.
sure. Yeah,
I heard. So here's. I want to talk about that for a second because. And by the way, I don't know if what I'm saying is like. If there is anybody watching, do not take my word for this because I'm just spitballing here. So I'm not any authority on this. But somebody said something. It was a priest and a talk I heard recently. I don't recall who the priest was or the talk, so that's not a good start. But like the
that's
point is,
helpful.
it struck me, and I thought, whoa, that's interesting, because I've had I've been somebody who's had struggles with anger in my life, different periods and of deep anger. So part of I think the reason I was getting bogged down when I would see like when a lot of like energy was feeling very angry or like rifled was because that's one of those things that I have to. It's kind of like when
It
you
was
cover your
triggering
eyes.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like something I'm like, oh, I got to be careful. If I could easily fall into this. Like this is something I see myself totally leaning into because I get that. Like I totally get it. And so I think part of it was like the stretch of like, it's weird. It's like how it's kind of how the devil works. Sometimes he's like, here, listen to this. It's going to perk you up. It's going to be this. It's going to be cloaked under this veil of like, this is justified and this is this. And you're going to
right.
feel righteously anger. Well, then I listened to something recently and a priest was saying that a lot of times righteous anger, like a lot of people will look at something that is, and I don't know of how right this is. I'd have to talk to like somebody like a theologian or a priest and get their take, but it just stuck out to me. So maybe I'm hearing it right. But somebody was like saying, he was saying that like a lot of times people will use the idea of righteous anger, but it's not really, it's being taken like too far out of context to sort of support their own need to just kind of go off. And then I was reading yesterday, I was telling you in the back end, I don't know if it was yesterday, a couple days ago, that I started recently really getting into the Bible. Like I have been trying to read the Bible for like 2 years, and it's been so difficult. And then all of a sudden, I can't put it down. Like I'm like devouring Bible time. I'll read it like last week alone. I was reading it like up to 4 hours each day because I just could not put it down. It was the most amazing thing I've ever read in my life. And all of a
Do you
sudden,
feel like it's just like a healing salve, like on your soul?
yeah.
Because that's how I feel usually when I'm reading the Bible. It's the most consolation I've ever received in my life.
Well, I feel like it's a special grace right now because you know how sometimes when you're not ready, it's like you just can't do it even if you're like you're trying, that's how it was before. It was like I could not get through anything. Not too substantial, but then I started in the Gospels. I actually worked back. I went from Luke to Matthew versus Matthew to Luke, or not Luke, John to Matthew versus anyway. And then I started like really wondering like, okay, well, I didn't even know what the other books were about. So I was reading the Corinthians. I'm still reading First Corinthians, but I was just seeing so much relevance in what Paul was talking about to the in the Corinthians to about like correlation to even just our day to day. And I don't know, it was so wild. It was like Catholic versus Catholic, and like it was talking about. I think he was mentioning like how you shouldn't like do lawsuits against your brothers, within the church. And you definitely shouldn't take them before like pagan courts and air out the church's dirty laundry before. It's like, can you not resolve your issue with your brother and not in front of the world? Because like it demeans the church, essentially. That's what I gathered from it. So I'm open to correction if that's not.
No, well, it's really interesting because in First
what I should have
Corinthians,
taken.
he talks so much about unity and trying to make sure we're protecting unity. Like it's like a duty that we have as Christians to go out of our way to attempt to be unified. And I'm not saying, there are bad actors, all of the caveats and everything. But I think a lot of this has to do with the disposition that we have to nurture in a world where it's really easy to just spew stuff out into the internet, like you're just putting it out there for the world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this outward disposition where you're always positioned outward instead of looking inward. It's very much like in the Novus Ordo, the readings for this weekend with the tax collector and the Pharisee, and being like, oh, thank God I'm not like the tax collector. And then we read it and we're like, oh, thank God I'm not like the Pharisee. And we're all kind of like doing that. It's like this weird inception thing we're all doing. And it's all like, the point is that we have to cultivate an interior disposition that is like, okay, how can I grow in holiness, and how can I love my brother and sister? How can I love them instead of like having this insatiable need to always be right? How can I foster relationship? Because I think that's where a lot of people, we can go wrong when we're constantly like, I'm right about this thing. And it's like, yeah, you really might be, but like,
Right.
at what cost are you winning this argument? Is it at the cost of like someone else's soul or your own soul? Is it worth
especially
it?
people who have like online platforms, because these videos live online forever. So even if you're only talking to like one person, one or two people while you're on, they live forever for anybody to ever, see them in the future. And that's a lot of responsibility. That's no small thing. I think it's so easy for us to think it's small because we live in this day and era where we've always had this stuff. But no, that's a pretty large responsibility. And I do believe that God will someday hold us accountable to do our best. That's not to say that you should be like scrupulous or, whatever. I think that,
and it's not to say that there's never a reason to point out when someone is being wicked. That's not because the intention, there is no intention for unity, right? Like, they're being objectively wicked. They're actually a hand of the devil. Like,
so can I say something on that real fast?
Go ahead.
Actually, that's really funny because I thought about like what was really like stirring me up. It's not people calling people out. Like, it's like if like, for instance, the Basilica thing, the LGBT thing, that was wrong. That's like 100%. It actually made me physically sick, even though I had no faith loss. I was not angry about it. I had a very weird visceral reaction to it because it's almost like it's objectively grotesque, quite frankly. I think what I was, I'm also very sensitive to like emotions and for whatever, I don't know, I'm just a very sensitive person, so I might be a little different. And but like when I see,
I like it.
Sometimes I kind of wanted to look online at some and see like some of these like men that I follow give me that, even though I was feeling it already in my chest, my faith wasn't shaken at all. I kind of wanted to see, there's something about, I'm learning as I'm growing in my femininity, especially. It's been a huge part of my story, is trying to understand what it means to be, not just a child of God, but a female. Quite frankly, and what my role is as a female. And, I don't have a husband. I don't have this. So I feel like I'm in a weird spot in my own personal walk because we were talking about it prior, is like, I'm looking for like masculine role models to like kind of give me a sense of that, like, cause I don't have a husband. I look to my priest for most of this stuff right now, but I don't have a lot of, I'm gaining more masculine figures that can help me navigate things better, but somebody that you can really look to for leadership. But like, there was a few people, I want to say it was Kennedy, actually. Maybe it was Kennedy. He actually came on, and I remember watching, if it wasn't about the Basilica thing, it was about something else, but he had come on, and actually his response was like so calming to me. It was like when everybody else was having kind of like they were almost panicked or angered to the point where it felt like, maybe they were being disturbed by it. His response was very, it reminded me that who wins. And I needed that. I needed that, especially from a man, quite frankly, because I have a lot of wounds in the area of masculinity.
Right.
So to see a faithful man stand and be that person that was like, nope, the calm and the storm, you know what I mean?
And men have so much power, like, over that, like and it's not just like within their own homes, it's a cultural thing. And so when you see such an enormous amount of disorder, like
Yeah.
I hate going on X, honestly, so much, because so many of these men are so effeminate. I mean, and they genuinely hate women, you know. Like, I it's it makes me think like, wow. My husband is always like, Ange, because he's not on social media like hardly at all. I
Yeah.
think he has a Facebook, you know, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But
That's
he's
good.
like, Ange, it's not real. It's not, none of that's real. And I'm saying like, yes, you're right, but because people would never say these things in person, face to face, in mixed company, but
Yeah.
they will put it all over the internet. But the thing is that it's changing how they interact in the real life, because
Mhm.
it's formative in their intellect. And so,
Yeah.
and that changes how our intellect is formed, is going to naturally change how we interact with the world around us and interact with the people around us. So even though we might not say these really wicked things to people, to their faces, if we're nurturing those types of thoughts and we're
Mhm.
putting it out there, we're getting a lot of validation, we're getting all these likes and retweets and whatever it is. People are validating that. It's firing this dopamine hit and that serotonin. And so it's like, yep, that's a good thing. Why, I'm right. I'm going to continue. And it's like just feeding into the breakdown between other people, like that division that we're supposed to be fighting so hard against. I don't know. It's a very weird
Yeah.
time to exist in an online space.
Well, and once again, I want to just be clear that like when I'm seeing this, I'm not judging anybody for like having these issues. What I only say all this to say that this is part of, back to your original question of why I took a breather, was because I realized very quickly that well, like I said, my biggest fear was I don't want to be a stumbling block for anybody in the church. I don't want my own.
Mhm.
I was starting to get really hyped up about the James Martin figures. Funny story,
Oh.
actually. I'll give you an example. I know we've talked about obedience a lot, and one of the things that it's one of my favorite topics is actually obedience. It has been lately. It's been like a theme of the season that I'm in, if you want to call it that. But obedience was like, okay, what does that mean? Well, I have a story. It's really funny. I think it's funny because there was a post. I'm sorry. There was a bishop, and I'm not going to say who it was, who had made a sort of very liberal-esque comment in the wake of the trans shooting at a Catholic parish.
Oh, that was
And
yeah, like in my diocese. Yeah.
yeah, and I was very upset. So it's not to say that I don't get the upset part. I get that part.
Mhm.
I wanted with everything in my bones to go just unleash online. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm actually just gonna like, I had to pause for a second and just think like, it wasn't that would have been like not justified. People would have totally understood. But then I thought I just wanted to pause a second because I don't tend to make really good decisions when I'm hyped, when I'm that hyped. And I thought, okay, well, I just want my decisions to be well thought out. And so I paused,
Mhm.
gave myself a breather. I was like, no one expect. I'm not like a big social media personality, so no one expects me to say anything on this anyway. You know what I mean? So I have that luxury
Mhm.
of just sort of being like, yeah, nobody cares what you think, so just don't say anything right now. Like, you can respond to this some other time once you're chill. And so I was like, okay, well, it turned into me writing a letter to this bishop.
Oh, wow.
I did not send it, but I'll tell you why. That's part of the funny part of the story. So I wrote a letter to this bishop, and I sent it to my brother, and I was like, what do you think of this? But I was very fiery. I mean, it was it was pretty fiery. I was very on point. Like,
I would
my
love to
brother,
read it.
I'll have to send it to you on the back end. I cannot post it because my priest said this is not becoming of a woman to do to a bishop in public. And I thought, but see, that's the thing, is like I took a chance. If I would have just posted it when I was like super heated, the funny thing is I know a million people online who would have never ever questioned that because it was a well written letter.
Twice.
They would have
Mhm.
thought it was. They would have agreed, and then we would have all justified it in righteous anger. But here's the thing: is my priest, who I just I trust more than like probably anybody on earth right now, because he's just a very strong traditional priest. He I know I can send him something if I'm questioning it and be like, what do you think? And I know that he's a man of few words, but that's part of the beauty of like traditionalism, is that because they're very few words, that you can trust every word that they're saying without
Yeah.
and he has authority over me as a parishioner of his, you know what I mean? So
Right.
if I subject this to him, for him to say that wasn't becoming was like, I was so grateful. Oh my gosh. I actually felt gratitude after. I just said thank you, and I accepted it. But that's obedience, because he was saying like, I mean, what I took from it was that, one, what do you like to think that you can speak like this to a bishop? It's not that he said, then he suggested, even if you were going to send something privately, which we could, possibly do, you would have to really word it a lot differently. You can keep the same tone of everything, but you want to word it respectfully. Like you are talking to a descendant or whatever you call it of the bishop of the apostles.
Yeah.
And not only that, but he himself like is between, like he would have to do it's just like a I don't know that I fully claim to understand it, but what I do is, this is why I love having somebody like a priest like that I trust, because I've only been a Catholic for so long. So I actually don't need to fully understand, because I trust his leadership. And this guy is, this father has proven himself time after time. He's very well liked. My brother loves him. It's nice to have a really solid priest that you don't have to wonder or fight with them on why something is the way it is. I just get to, it relieves me of a lot of,
yeah.
I trust him, but it relieved me a lot of like, I didn't need to know I was just like, okay, you're right. And then I reread it, and it's not that anything I said was wrong. It was, there's an authority structure, and I'm a lay woman, and there's a way to speak and address the bishops. It's not publicly, and it's not with that type of thing, because then it encourages other people even to speak this way too, and it degrades the way we view our own leadership. Now, that's actually like, not to say that some people, you can argue that people deserve it. I don't know. I'm not here to have that conversation, because the truth is when my priest said to not post it, I just said, okay. You know what I mean? But I subjected to that authority, because I needed to know, like, am I crazy? And he's like, well, he said it's not becoming of a woman to post, to call out a bishop publicly like this way. That's all I needed. I just said, okay. And what's one thing I've learned from my own brother is that my brother and I were we subject our eternal Christendom to the authority of this same priest. Meaning that, like, if there's anything, he doesn't sit there and go through everything we do with a comb, but if he were to, see something, or we had any issues or thoughts about, being public, because the truth is being public in a very loud and ugly, disgusting world like we're in is a lot of responsibility. And the second, and also not only that, but it's not just a lot of responsibility for the people that you are viewing, or that are viewing you rather. It is also that you have a target that you couldn't believe, that's the size of something insane on your back when you speak for the church in public, which means that the devil's going to attack you from every angle possible. So you could be blinded to your own sort of like stuff and be even convinced that what you're doing is right. And in the meantime, the devil's like tricked you into your downfall, and you didn't even know it happened.
Right. Because it was done under the guise of virtue.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just one of those things that I haven't been in the church long enough. And I was realizing very quickly, my biggest fear was, I just found the love of my entire life. I've seen evil. I've seen like the most, like, people don't even know half of it. There's things I could not share on this channel or in public spaces. It would be unbecoming, but I've seen evil. I want nothing to do with it. When I met the love of my life, which was Jesus Christ, I had a fear that I would ruin that. And, the more you read the saints, you see that they talk about this narrow path. I've had a healthy fear of not being on that narrow path.
Well, and this is a good point because this is like healthy fear of God. I think sometimes people think fear of God is like cowering because you're so afraid that he's going to condemn you to hell. And it's not
Right.
that. Like a proper healthy fear of God is almost like it's that childlike fear you have of disappointing your parents. Like you don't want your dad to look at you and say, I am so disappointed in you, because that hurts so much more than him saying like, this is what you deserve. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, I don't know, for me, when somebody I love is like, you really hurt me. Like,
Mm.
I would rather take the lashing than for them to express to me how much I hurt them, because that is way more painful to deal with. I would rather
Yeah.
just take my lashings.
Well, and that's actually a really good point. So I had in this like sort of silence that I've experienced, it's not like just, I've had a lot of, obviously life goes on for everybody, so we all have like these private lives on top of what people know of us online, which is very little compared to the iceberg that is our lives.
Mhm.
Um and I've gotten very well acquainted actually with Our Lady of Sorrows.
Mm.
And I say that only to say this, is that actually that's very true. I realized I realized this very early on, and it's only gotten deeper. And I feel like at this point, I've noticed that what I'm about to share is only going to continue to get deeper, so long as I keep growing towards God. And that is that when you really, in the beginning, you sort of love God because you just don't want to go to hell, and also in a weird way you love him because the consolations, like when I had that experience at the church, that was such a profound consolation. I would call it that, probably because it felt so piercing to me in such a life-giving way that it changed my whole life. It changed the trajectory of my whole life, right? But
Mhm.
then you realize really quickly, like, I was noticing very quickly, because I've been historically like a drug addict, you know what I mean? So I've
Right.
used things to make me feel better that have been my own like man-made consolations, if you will.
Right.
And so what I was realizing as I was growing in my prayer life, and I still don't enjoy it too much, to be honest. Dry seasons, like I am the
I
biggest
get it.
baby. I still complain about it. I'm just being honest. But what I've noticed is that you start to really want to do things because you just genuinely like. I It's such a, sorry, I'm like trying to articulate it because it's like so in one hand I realize how inadequate my love is based on what I'm about to say, but I also can genuinely say that there's nothing in my life that I've loved more than Jesus Christ. And that's not because I don't want to go to hell. That's because when I was acquainted with Our Lady of Sorrows, and she really helped me through some other private things that I've experienced. I You probably actually might have seen this as a mom. I've had similar experience. I have my little brother with me. I won't go in too much into my personal family because stuff. But what I will say is that sometimes when you have somebody else like who's depending on you in certain ways, and you see them suffering, and you can't stop that, you have to be you. That's when you start to understand Our Lady of Sorrows,
Mm.
and you start to understand how powerful presence is for somebody, and sometimes to placate somebody with words when they're experiencing something deeply painful. Like if there's people who you can go in and I could be like, oh, it's gonna be okay, it's like, no, that's like actually like harmful in a situation like this. I just need you to let me be where I'm at, and
Mm.
I would rather you just be close to me and just don't say anything.
Because I think with suffering like that, I mean, I've definitely experienced that. I experienced a lot of that after my sister died, in particular,
Mm,
like a lot of like, wow, you're so strong. You're going to be just fine. Like
yeah.
all of those things. And I remember feeling like it's almost like you're wanting me to, it's dismissing, it feels dismissive. And I know that that's not the intention. Like, I know the
Sure.
intention is like people are uncomfortable with sorrow and grief and
Yeah.
discomfort in general. We're all awkward when it comes to discomfort.
Yeah.
We don't like to suffer. We don't like to be mortified.
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling like I think the reality about suffering and of that nature where your soul is being ripped apart, whether it's tragedy befalls you, or like you're having some kind of an identity crisis, or a relationship is breaking down and you're trying to fix it, or whatever it is, like whatever is causing you that intense grief, the only way is through it. We can't circumvent it. You don't find healing circumventing it, because that gaping hole will always rear its ugly head when you least expect it. And unless you have like worked through it and just seen it for what it is, you will never fully heal from that. And so like when people are trying to get you to walk around it in a way, it's like you're not helping. Like, I actually just want you to sit there and stare at this thing with me and just tell me, like, you're not crazy. That is really ugly. That thing that you're staring down, that whatever that demon is, it's wicked, it's ugly. But I'm gonna stand with you, and I'm gonna like go through this thing with you, and support you the best way that I can. So yeah, I understand that, and I've never. It's funny, I didn't have a devotion to Our Lady of Sorrows, but I, like, in hindsight, I wish I did at that time.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's even a different level. Like, if you're talking about somebody like you just objectively are seeing that, maybe a friend or something that you see they're going through something hard, I think Our Lady of Sorrows presented herself to me, and when I say presented, I don't mean like I had a vision or anything like that. I just mean, Our Lady makes herself available in certain ways. All of a sudden, Our Lady of Sorrows is more frequently around, and you're like noticing it, and then you like realize that, I need to maybe make more of devotion here. But then there's a way that you experience the piercing of her heart. I was going through some like really significant, painful stuff, like things that but it wasn't here. I'm getting to a point. This is all wrapping around to what I was trying to say earlier about your relationship with God and loving him because you love him, and how painful that is when you start to realize that it's like this holy tension between realizing just how much you need him to do any good and how close you have to be to him constantly to even be able to do that. Because when you start to love him like in that deep way, it's actually really painful, because you realize that it's your inadequacy that put him on the cross. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's actually like, people talk about that, but I don't like, I venture to say that less have even maybe experienced, like, in their own silence. If you just were to get silent with Jesus every day, I mean, like, genuinely, like, if you just focused on that, like, it's changed my entire life. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the best at it. It's taken me I've had to really work hard to do that. But like, what he's given me in those silence is actually quite painful. But it's in a way that I feel like he's allowing me in. So through the Our Lady of Sorrows, I could only see her pierced heart. Quite frankly, there's a very vivid memory I have right now, by being in the presence of somebody physically that I deeply love, that I would literally like throw myself in front of a bus for. Like, I would take a bullet for this kid, like my little brother. Love him. I've never experienced like love like that. When you're around a child, I would do anything for him.
It's scary how vulnerable it makes
I thought, well, maybe I thought this is what it might be like to be a parent. That's the closest thing, because I'm not a parent, but I thought, well, maybe that's what it is. But when you see something like that going through something that you can't prevent, that's when you understand how. And I'm not going to probably articulate this the best. I hope. I wish I could. There's like almost, it's like all language sort of fails it, but that's when I really understood, in the small way that I could, just how much love was in the act of Our Lady stoically sitting at the foot of the cross. And you're like, well, this is what I feel for another creature. This isn't even the God of everything. This is just a creature. I feel this for this creature that God created. But how much deeper would that be for the God of everything, for the God that created me and this creature that I love so much? and so then you start to really identify that all these other ways that you let him down. And it's not about scrupulosity. Actually, I did go through scrupulosity a little earlier on in my conversion. I would say the first like maybe year or so, give or take, maybe a little less. I kind of dealt with a little more scrupulosity, but as time went on, it wasn't really scrupulosity anymore. It was just like, look, but I'm also like somebody who I never had any religion at all in my life. I didn't believe in God prior, so I had no virtue. I didn't know what the cardinal sins were. I mean, I was on a mission to figure out all the ways. Like I went to confession like every week, but like only because I was trying to really like the good thing I like about the traditional and why I'm so drawn to traditional like stuff. One, because I came in through the Latin Mass, as you know. So it's really all I knew. I actually didn't know there was a Novus Ordo Mass. I thought that I was
so inverted for most of us. Like I didn't know that the Latin Mass existed until my mid-20s, and I was raised Catholic. I had no idea. So it's just so funny to hear that from somebody like, I didn't know that there was a Novus Ordo. This was,
Well, when I walked into a Novus Ordo for the first time, I was actually shocked. I thought I was at I had to like remember like, is this a Catholic church? Yeah. Not because I just didn't know. I didn't have any but one thing I like about the way I can only speak on how I've been brought up in the church, and I've been brought up in a traditional format. So it's all I've known. So how I was brought up though is like our priest very well catechized us in like how to properly confess. So, you have to know which commandment you've, violated, so to speak. You have to know the kind and the number and so, well, how do you know that? I mean, how do you know that if you're not very acquainted with the, with those things? Like so I started like going through like really big, anyway, my point is that I've had different areas where I've had to be very vigilant and try to figure out like, what am I committing a sin? Because there are sometimes things that you don't even realize that you're sinning, and it will be filed probably under venial sin because your ignorance to it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't pierce God's heart just as much. Because like my priest was talking about actually a couple weeks ago, he was saying if people knew how horrific venial sin was, it would just mortify them. Like if we think of like, we tend to think of things very black and white, like mortal sin, venial sin. All sin guts our Lord. Like it is deeply painful. And so anyway, when I'm thinking about that, I was like really adamant to not even want to like, I'm nowhere near this obviously. But I would love to eventually someday be, if it's even possible, to not even like hopefully venially sin. But I need God's help for that. And yeah, I don't know. So that's part of the reason why I started taking a break was because it's already hard enough to be a good to really want to be a good Catholic in the world we live in. I mean, we live in a time that's like a million times more, sinful than Sodom and Gomorrah. And when you think about that, you're like, whoa, because like you think of that story. I remember hearing about that story when I was like when I was a kid, and then you think about like, wait, we live in times that are like that, blow that out of the water. And I just so I don't live in fear of not being on the narrow path per se. I think the word I would like to say is I'm very vigilant because I think I have a really special grace though that God gave me because I came from the background that I do. I have, when people read like the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, that book, like I could have written that book. I'm not a C.S. Lewis, but I could have written that book because when God started helping me kind of try to understand how spiritual warfare happens, I'm like, yeah, I've lived that because God had to like reverse engineer my experience with like becoming like part of like in our silence. It's like I asked God, I was like, Jesus, like, how did I even get to this place? How did I get to this place where this was so normal to me? This was so normal to me. I gave up this beautiful nature that you gave me. Like it was nothing. That's insane. I mean, I often call the trans ideology like the black mass. It's the inversion of the holy sacrifice of the mass. Jesus says, I give up my body for you, to give, and to give us life. And the trans ideology says, you give up your body, you sacrifice your body for you to get life.
So that's interesting because abortion does the same thing.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah.
And that's why all these life issues are so, again, not to like go on and on about Pelican Plus, but like this is why I'm excited to do this show, because like you're right. That's all of these things that are an affront to the dignity of the human person really come down to like, I will not serve, and it's my body. I'll do what I want with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like those two things. And I wonder if it's because one has to do with the will and the other has to do with our incarnational nature. So it's like the both and.
Yeah. I don't know. This is where like I'm so happy that my brother is like more of a theologian, because like I can only talk from my perspective on like what I'm experiencing, because I'm like, I try to be very careful about people taking, like, I'm just sharing sort of a journey that I'm on. By no means am I authority in any of this stuff. So
neither of us are, but you're way more humble
really
about it. I'm like, these are my thoughts. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Yeah,
like, hey,
it is really interesting to
I'm gonna
think
say
about,
this, but you don't have to listen to me. But this is what I think, but I might be wrong.
Well, here's what I will say I understand so far in my own story is that the darkening of the intellect was so real for me. Like, that's the blindness. And to be honest with you, I'm terrified of that blindness, which is why part of the healthy fear of wanting to be on the straight and narrow. So it's not scrupulosity. It's recognizing that when you get to the point where you're that blind, you are actually that blind. There is a point which you are given up to your own sin.
Yep.
That's terrifying because you don't even know that you've entered that. The only way out, I'm almost convinced, because obviously you need grace, but the only wake-up call for that, in my experience was this way, is that you have to get so desperate that the only thing you have left is like, you have to get all the pride beat out of you to the point where you're humble enough to ask God for help. Right. Now, but sin is so tricky that way. It's just so tricky. Like, if you're not like aware of like yourself and like how you sort of behave within these like things that oh, hi baby.
There's Alice.
Hi Alice.
She just turned 1 on the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary.
Happy birthday. That's a great birthday.
I know.
Wow. That's awesome. But yeah, so that's part of why I just realized that I couldn't figure out how to not offend God, and I still offend him all the time. So don't think that I think that I'm out of that yet. I'm still very much working on that, but I'm working on building virtue right now. I had a lot of bad habits, in my last life. I was very undisciplined. And it's true, the older you get, the harder becoming disciplined and changing some of these things that are very difficult. So it's taken a lot of mental effort, and I guess I just always thought that like if God wants me to speak somewhere or say something, then he'll provide that opportunity. I don't really have to worry about that. I don't really have to worry about being relevant. It's such a trap, man. Social media is
don't live your life in an algorithm. Like,
it's like, dude, one thing, have you ever heard of NF? He's like a Christian rapper. I used to listen to him all the time because like I understood his like brain. A Christian rapper, meaning that he didn't always like rap about God. He's more Protestant, but I used to listen to him a lot. But one of the things that I always admired about him is that he would drop an album and it would blow up and then he would disappear. And everybody always told him like, hey, to stay relevant, you gotta keep going. There's people who are just bouncing things out. And he was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not a slave to an algorithm. Like and that was the first time I heard something like that. This is long before I was a Catholic. And so, if you're quiet with God every day and you really feel called and you have that peace about speaking about something and he wants to provide a way, you think that an X algorithm or a YouTube algorithm is going to stop you from opening the doors God wants you to go through? So like it's just such a worldly way to look at something. And that the need to stay relevant is a dangerous place to be.
Agreed.
And I just realized I just didn't want to even be tempted by that because it's a very easy thing to be tempted by. And so it scared me because, yeah, that's all I have to really say on that, I guess. So that's why.
Well, I'll be looking forward to you getting back into the swing of things if you think that that's where God is calling you. And if you end up writing a book, that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. But yeah, I'm really glad that I'm grateful that you shared your thoughts tonight about all of those things. And I think it just is like good food for thought for all of us because it is easy to get caught up
So
in
easy.
this space. So can you
So
tell,
easy, yeah.
do you want to plug Eternal Christendom at all? And not that my tiny little podcast has any reach of like even a portion of the magnitude, but I'd love for you to share about it anyway.
Yeah, so I'm right now I'm grateful and blessed to serve as director of operations for Eternal Christendom. It's my brother's apostolate, our apostolate, and basically you go to eternalchristendom.com, check it out. We have over 1.5 million words of free content. My brother has been studying the early church fathers. He's read almost everything he's almost gone through it all. I don't know precisely, but my point is that he that's how he was converted. He came into the church through St. Ignatius of Antioch specifically, and realized that the Catholic Church was the one true church. And so he really thought that this kind of information needed to be out there. So we have a mission to basically make all this, words that lay bare on a page that's very inspiring to our current generation who is very social media, and have like 10-second brains. We basically
Like
try to make it all
Tom in
Yeah.
what movie is that with Drew Barrymore?
51st Dates.
51st Dates, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Tom.
Yeah. And so essentially all that stuff is free now. So we have a lot of study guides, a lot of study banks, we have Church Father Archive and quote archive. It's all free. If you just go there, you could sign up for a newsletter if you'd like. Also our podcast has now reached 21,000 subscribers on YouTube. So that one's always really good. We have a lot of good interviews and stuff like that.
Like
so
only podcasts I only listen to a few. I listen to yours. And then I listened to The Devil's in the Details with Jordan and Dan Burke. And then what else? Occasionally like Michael Knowles or something, but like not very often actually anymore. So yeah, I mean, there are only a few out there that I love the work that you guys are doing. And so even though my tiny by comparison podcast, I still want to make sure that people, if you're like a weirdo and you haven't heard of it yet, go check it out because it's so good. So anyway, well, thanks so much, Nancy. I will have you back on here soon. We'll iron out those details of like a somewhat schedule. But thank you so much. And I appreciate your wisdom and your prudence. I feel like we just all need a little bit more of that these days. So
thank you.
And thanks to everybody who tuned in. It's good to see you tonight. It's been a while since I've streamed. And until next time, I guess God bless. Please check out Pelican Plus. I'd love it if you did. If you decide you want to subscribe, Code Life gets you a little bit of a discount and lets them know that you're oh my gosh. I'm disconnected. I gotta go. Bye.